As we begin today's talk, I invite you once again to go into your heart space and briefly reflect on a couple of questions. The first one, when was the last time your imagination changed how you saw someone or something? And what if the way we imagine the world actually helps create the world that each of us experience? Just be with that for a few moments as we go into today's talk that originally was titled Love Leads the Way. And I realize that's just the Reader's Digest version because as the talk created itself, it expanded a little more in theme and title. It's seeds of possibility, imagining oneness into being as we allow love to lead the way. And I have to remember that for myself. Sometimes I forget to allow. I've got myself in the way of all of that. So today we stand at the intersection of imagination and embodiment. It also happens to be Palm Sunday today in the Christian tradition. Yet metaphysically, Palm Sunday is not just a historical event, it's an invitation to consciousness. Each of us are invited to be in that consciousness. And the palm branches that many of us here who may be aware of what we've either read in the Bible, seen on movies, that people were holding as Jesus rode in on the back of the donkey on either side of the road, those symbolized victory, yet they weren't victory over others. They were victory over fear, victory over separation, and victory over limitation. The crowd welcomed Jesus into Jerusalem, and they laid the palms down on the ground. Yet they didn't fully understand the consciousness that he represented. They expected a different kind of power. So I have a question. Isn't that still true today, that we have something different that we expect? Like we'll say yes to love until love asks us to truly change. It's like, whoa, I say I want it, but do I really want it? Am I committing to make that change? And we'll also celebrate oneness until oneness stretches us out of our comfort zone. Jesus spoke directly to this deeper truth, and he said, the kingdom of God is within you. Haven't we heard that somewhere before? We're reminded of our spiritual unity when our founder, Reverend Dr. Ernest Holmes, said, the manifest universe is the body of God. All people are incarnations of the one Spirit. This aligns so beautifully with our Centers for Spiritual Living global theme for this year, open at the top. Boy, we're sure being called to be open at the top with what's happening in the world today, aren't we? And it also reminds us that it's the guiding question for the month of March. What if? And our speakers that have spoken this month have each spoken in each their own unique way about that. Today's practice, and it's a spiritual practice that we're going through during this talk, is planting seeds of possibility. And it's rooted in the awareness of oneness. And we talk about that a lot, oneness. So let's explore 3 ways that imagination actually helps us plant those seeds. The first point, imagining oneness as a lived reality. It has to be lived. Otherwise, it's just lip service, right? So I'll ask you a question. What might change if you truly believed that every person is another expression of the same life that lives in each one of us, what would change? A lot of things could change, but some that we don't even realize or can't even articulate what that would be until we start feeling different or we have different awarenesses. Ernest Holmes wrote, "Mind is always creating according to the nature of the thought held in it." We've heard thoughts are things a lot, haven't we? Through the science of mind teachings. So every thought we hold about one another is actually doing something. Visible or invisible, it's actually doing something. And the lens that we look through becomes the world that we each experience. So true. A few weeks ago, I was walking in my neighborhood. My heart was feeling kind of heavy because I was thinking about the events going on in the world and the warfare and all of those things. And I was so absorbed in that, I just kind of heard out of, part of an area in the neighborhood, didn't really see it clearly, that somebody was calling a dog, yelling after a dog. I looked up and kind of saw this dog go by. I didn't see the person. And immediately my mind started creating this story of a real event that happened in our neighborhood with this huge dog. The dog was so huge, and then the owner of the dog often left it off leash or didn't close the gate in the backyard, and the dog ran around the neighborhood. It was so big, and it was so happy, it didn't know its own strength. One day when my sister was taking a walk, the dog actually knocked her down to the ground. And so she went to talk, she got up, she wasn't hurt, and she went to talk to the neighbor to ask him to please keep his dog on leash, or at least confined into their yard. And the neighbor was defensive and confrontational. So my mind was thinking about that whole scenario, and then I was imagining going down the rabbit hole. The police are going to be called, because they've been called before for different circumstances with the same neighbor. And then, what's going to happen with the poor dog? It's not the dog's fault. He's just being a dog. And the haze of my own preoccupation with my own thoughts kind of cleared a little bit. And I looked up as I got closer, and it was a different dog, a different neighbor. The neighbor was simply trying to get his dog into the cab of his pickup, and the dog got loose from his grip and was just enjoying that freedom, like dogs do, just being a dog. In that moment, I felt so humbled. I really did. I created separation right then and there, separation from, being aware of consciousness and alignment. Oh, man. You think you've got it, and then you don't. Has that ever happened to anybody here? No. So I asked myself a different question. What if I walked this neighborhood believing that every person here is another expression of the same life as me? What if each of us walked our own neighborhoods believing that each of us was the same expression? That's oneness. So as I contemplated that a little bit, my shoulders kind of softened a bit, because sometimes I can be like Miss Straight Lace. And I'll ask Alan about that. So I started to make eye contact with the neighbor. Hadn't met him before, but he was preoccupied getting his dog in the cab. And I smiled, but not just out of politeness, but being present. Just being present in the moment, not being fake. How would I like to be treated? And then something shifted. A little bit of conversation followed as I introduced myself and connection started to grow. The neighborhood didn't change. My consciousness is what changed. Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King says, hatred paralyzes life. Love releases it. Hatred confuses life. Love harmonizes it. Hatred darkens life. Love illuminates it. So Palm Sunday teaches that sometimes we welcome a higher truth before it actually is understood by the world. We lay down our palms anyway. So Jesus said, "Blessed are the peacemakers, for they shall be called the children of God." Peace begins in consciousness. So imagine this. What might change if we imagined daily and vividly a world already changing through love? What might change? Just feel that. Internally and outwardly. Point number 2. Imagining beyond limitation. Dr. Ernest Holmes reminds us there is no limit to the power of mind except the limit we place upon it. Isn't that the truth? Imagination is not fantasy. It's a creative activity of spirit moving through each of us. Jesus expressed the same spiritual law when he said, "With God, all things are possible." There was a time when I believed that I really didn't have a right to have a voice. Kind of lived in that little small space in my younger childhood years and still struggled through the later years. That my voice didn't matter. And then my grandma Pearl, my favorite grandma, I'm sorry other grandmas, but she was my favorite. When I graduated from high school, she gave me this little book, about like that. On the front, it had a beautiful shooting star, and it had the words, "Aim for a star." Little did I know that as I read that book, it was planting not only her pearls of wisdom, but the seeds of possibility that were from those pearls of wisdom. Each page illuminated and filled my heart and my mind, and allowing imagination to take place for me as a young person who believed what other people told me that I looked up to. Well, I looked up to her, and through the years, I read each page over and over and over. I don't have that little book anymore, but it's forever here. So thank you, Grandma. And so eventually I asked myself and the universe a different question. What if the one life actually needs this unique expression? My unique expression. What if the one life actually needs each of our unique expressions? Wow. Because we're created in that image, right? We're created in love. And from love, all else is possible. Asking that question dissolved comparison. And not all comparison. A life is a journey. And so with every awareness comes the opportunity for a realized another awareness. It just keeps on going. You think, I've got it. I'm cool. You know, I'm not ever going to make any more mistakes. I'm not going to hurt somebody's feelings. Well, things happen because we're living this life and we're learning. And so forgiveness is important for each of ourselves in that entire process. It also helped to dissolve some thoughts and beliefs of scarcity and waiting for permission. Do we have to wait for permission to be ourselves? We don't. Sometimes I think I do, but I'm going, well, wait a minute. I was put here for a reason, so let's express. In the book for the month of March, Multi-Species Cities, Solar Punk Urban Futures, say that 3 times fast. And by the way, Sherry wanted me to remind everyone that we have more of these in the bookstore for you. There's a couple of tales that I'd like to let you know about, really micro versions of them, little snippets. And one is more of a little snippet than the other one. So we'll start with the micro snippet one. There are 2 characters here having a conversation. And it's during a time where there had been a lot of violence in that region. And it was a region where they had a lot of different wild animals. And what happened with that violence is that it really had created a lot of fierceness with the animals and the violence that came from the humans and a lot of imbalance. Somewhere along the way, they started realizing that that just isn't working for them. So they found a way that they could start living in harmony with each other. So one of the people saw a tiger walking around, and the tiger was walking how tigers do. You know how their haunches kind of just go like that? I just love watching cats walk, especially the big wild beasts there. And the tiger was walking through the village, and then people were seeing the tiger, and they were all just okay with it. The one person asked, why is this tiger walking there? Why isn't anybody afraid? And they replied, as we've gotten less violent, so have they. It said a lot in those few words. The other tale, that's a little bit bigger of a snippet, is about 2 women. I'll just say Jane and Carol, because I don't remember their names. And they lived on the island of Hawaii. They wanted to go see the moon, the full moon at the ocean. So they went on a walk to go there. Well, this wasn't just any ordinary walk on the beach. This was a walk on the beach for a special purpose, and that was to see the baby sea turtles hatch out of their eggs by the light of the full moon. They were so excited for that. So they went to the ocean, waiting, anticipating this sacred sight, really. I mean, how often does that happen? And then they realized that the full moon was mostly covered with clouds. The baby sea turtles hatched one by one, and instead of being guided by the full moon to the shore, they started heading the opposite direction. They started heading towards the multitude of houses off of the beach that were brightly lit, and the street lights that were brightly lit. Carol said, this isn't going to do. I've got to do something. Using her imagination, what can I do? She remembered, now keep in mind this is futuristic. She pulled out of her pocket a device she had created that could remotely turn electricity off. So she said, let's give this a shot. She pointed it towards each one of the houses. Click, click, street lights, click. One by one, the lights went out. That's a done deal. These turtles are going to head towards the ocean. No. They were confused. They didn't have any light. Have you ever driven your car where a squirrel runs in front of your car and it's going like that and it doesn't know where it's going to go? That's kind of what they were like, except they were in turtle mode. Oh, what are we going to do? So she just sat with it a little bit. Okay, this is what we can do. They need light. So she took out her cell phone, and you know how on the cell phones we have the little flashlight? She pressed the flashlight, she shined it towards the baby turtles, and backed up towards the surf of the beach. One by one, those little turtles turned around, and before you knew it, they were all in the ocean. When consciousness shifts, life responds. Zen teacher Thich Nhat Hanh wrote, "The miracle is not to walk on water. The miracle is to walk on the earth in the present moment." Transformation doesn't happen somewhere else. It begins in how we see and imagine reality right now. So consider this. What if the solutions we each seek are already seated in our imagination, waiting for our belief, just simply waiting for us to believe? Point number 3, practicing the imagined world. So let's bring this into everyday life now. What is the one way you could live today as if the world you hope for is already emerging? What is the one way we each could live today as if the world we hoped for is already emerging? Holmes gives practical guidance to this, and he said, mind your own business, meaning the thoughts that we entertain. In other words, tend our own inner gardens, as transformation begins with consciousness. So I grew up in a family where money was often spoken of through the lens of lack. And the seeds that were planted by those thoughts and those words really filled me with some fear around prosperity. So through the Science of Mind teachings and using the tools of spiritual practice, I began to experiment with something different. I practiced abundance before it arrived. I tipped generously, which is fun to do. And I increased my giving, my tithing. What a wonderful feeling to do that. And I practiced gratitude. At first it felt kind of awkward. It didn't feel comfortable, like I was in someone else's skin. But then it started to feel more natural, and then it actually felt true. I was allowing the pearls of wisdom, those seeds of possibility, with imagining and being aligned with Spirit to work through me and grow me. So Palm Sunday reminds us that even when public opinion shifts, truth remains steady. When we hold a vision long enough and live as though it were already real, we become living evidence of that possibility. So I leave you with this question. What if the world we imagine together is not only possible, but already unfolding through us? Slide number 1, please. Peace Pilgrim, as many of us may know of from years ago, was a woman who dared to imagine a world of peace. And on New Year's Day in 1953, she gave up her birth name of Mildred Lizette Norman. She gave up her home and possessions to embark on a lifelong journey of peace. She walked across the United States and Canada for nearly 30 years until her passing. She wanted to awaken the world to our common humanity and spiritual potential. She covered over 25,000 miles during that, speaking to individuals and groups about nonviolence, inner peace, and the power of love over hatred. Her message was clear. She said, overcome evil with good, falsehood with truth, and hatred with love. Second slide, please. She wore simply a navy blue tunic with these big white letters on the front that said Peace Pilgrim, and on the back, 25,000 miles on foot for peace. Her journey was not just physical. Her journey was a spiritual practice. She carried no money, lived on the kindness of strangers, and walked as a prayer, inviting others to consider a world of peace, where peace is chosen daily. She said, look within for your answers. Your divine nature, your inner light, knows all of the answers. So in conclusion, imagination becomes the bridge. It's the bridge between vision and experience, between possibility and reality. So this week, imagine yourself becoming a spiritual practice of imagination. Imagine a world guided by love, seeing yourself living in that world. And remember that every loving thought is a seed, and every seed planted in infinite mind knows exactly how to grow. Every step that we each take plants the seed of love as we use our imagination to visualize that love is all there is. And so it is.